Welcome back to Bagels and Locks, episode 3. Can't believe it's been 3 weeks already. It's just flying by. Another week stuck in the queue, the big queue, quarantine.
Feels like it's
Uh,
getting easier though. It seems like things are sort of slightly getting back to normal, but it's still quarantine. We're still stuck. Still got to wear a mask everywhere. It is what it is. I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Jason. Go
no,
right
go,
ahead.
go, Brandon. I wanna. Where have you been going that you need this mascot? What have you been doing this since we last talked?
Well, I ran some errands today. I'll tell you that much. I had to go to the post office. A lot of people at the post office, but the post office, no matter what, even in a quarantine, in the situation where people are supposed to stay at home, not supposed to leave their house, the post office is still crowded as hell. There was like 10 people in front of me, like 6 people behind me, and we're all socially distanced because they got like 14 X's of where you're supposed to stand in there. Um, but aside from that,
That's
uh,
hilarious. I mean, the post office is just notoriously one of the busiest places in the world, and I
right,
guess evidently still during the quarantine. That's unreal.
yeah, it doesn't even matter, bro. Like an active volcano could be just spewing lava through the streets, and people still have to go send something to their friend, across the country. So the post office is thriving. In case you were wondering, it's in good shape.
I'll be sure to stay away from there.
Yeah, please. You heard it here first on Bagels and Locks. Um, but it feels like it's getting better. The weather has been tough these last few days for golf. I played a few rounds last week. The golf game is slowly improving, which is hype. Um, I'll tell you what, I had a round that it didn't go my way. It wasn't to my liking, and I was like, man, another season of this. Just like thinking like, when's it gonna click? When's it all gonna be pieced together? And I've been playing pretty well as of late, so I'm feeling good. I wish it could be out there, but it's pouring rain right now. It rained yesterday, and realistically, you're not gonna be able to play till later in the week once everything kind of dries up. But how about you, Jason? What's going on with you? I know you've been placing some bets. We've had some sports, some action finally, a little soccer, a little golf, a little NASCAR here and there. Things are working together. So tell us about your any bets you've been placing. What's going
Y-
on?
Yeah, I actually had a pretty good week last week, up about five units. Obviously, been taking a lot of action in the KBO. It's been pretty profitable for me. Uh, Riding the Dinos money line or run line pretty much every night has been pretty good. They're 10-1 this year. In the one game they lost, they had a multiple run lead go in the eighth or ninth inning and gave those up, so they could be undefeated. But I am a little worried for my Dinos tonight because they do play the Doosan Bears, and they have some of the best pitching and best hitting in the league, as well as the Dinos. They're right up on top of the league with them. I think they're only a game or like a half a game behind them. So it should be a pretty crazy match for the Dinos these next couple days. In addition to that, Bundesliga is back, the German soccer league. I took some action in there just before this show started. We hit that, and also, believe it or not, I ended up taking a driver in NASCAR, Kevin Harvick, who ended up winning the Darlington race yesterday, Sunday, and I took him fifth or better, and of course he finishes first. So I could have had him like plus 650, plus 700, made away like a bandit, but can't complain about winners. And I don't know. I'm thinking, maybe when real sports, not that these sports aren't real, but when, football, baseball, hockey, basketball, all those sports come back, I might be sticking to these more obscure type of leagues and stuff because they've been pretty kind to me.
What's interesting is you had mentioned to me that you watched that entire NASCAR race. Now
I
I'm
did.
not the biggest NASCAR fan, but every now and then, if there's something big or it's in the news, I'll turn it on. I'll flip to the channel. But usually, there's so many laps and there's so many stops,
Hmm.
whether it's a pit stop or there's an accident, like that takes a lot of time. So you saw every single lap of that race yesterday?
Well, I missed about, I think it was like 18 or 19 laps when I was eating dinner with my family. But like, as you know, the race is so long that I was comfortable with doing that. And I was also I had the race up on my laptop and I was watching some Netflix on my TV in the background. So it wasn't like I was just glued to the race the entire time. They actually recently put Avatar: The Last Airbender up on Netflix, so I've been ripping through that, kind of feeling the nostalgia, reliving my childhood a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I might be a NASCAR fan now. I'm not really sure. It's a lot of people say, well, they're just turning left, and that is true. They are just turning left. But all the different tracks have different, they're different angles and like grades and
Hmm.
different material, and you gotta be careful of your fuel and your tires, and your pit crew has to be all over it, and you have to make sure that you're passing people in a certain way that you don't bump them or rub them, because not only could you wipe them out, you could wipe yourself out. And in addition, there's something that I don't know if it's normal or not, but yesterday at Darlington they had, like, how along the walls and stuff they have advertisements, obviously. So I guess typically they're painted on, but yesterday there was a specific one that they used like this super strong adhesive to stick it onto the wall, and it ended up coming off the wall as the cars were driving by it. So one of the cars ended up having this kind of like banner over where their exhaust was, or not their exhaust, the front of the car, and it was causing them to overheat and all this stuff, and it was this huge thing. And it was cool to see how they would pull up right behind other cars and use the draft and the change of the wind, um, and the aerodynamics on the car to kind of knock that sign off of their car. But once it got off the first car, it went on to another car, and this happened like two or three times. And eventually, when one of them ended up pitting, or I think there might have been a caution, they took care of it. But it's just crazy because there's just like little things like that you just don't really think of, that you know no one really plans for, but you just sort of have to adjust to in the middle of a race.
Right. Well, it's amazing too, pit stops in general, how fast they get you in and out of there. So you'd think in a situation like that, where you're trying to get an advertisement or a banner off the car, I mean, they can get that done in a matter of seconds. So, but that's great that you're, enjoying some of the sports that maybe we don't appreciate as much when everything is in its full bloom. I assume there wasn't any fans in the stands, correct? There wouldn't
there
be
were
anybody
there were
watching.
no fans. It was really interesting, and they actually had the way they did the production was really interesting. They had, like, the race was in South Carolina, and they had some of the production team there on site, and then I guess the NASCAR headquarters is in North Carolina, so Fox had a separate crew there, and then they also had their studios in Los Angeles, also up and running. So it's sort of like a, you know triangle offense, if you will. They had going there with all three of them to make that broadcast possible. But it's kind of dark, and I know all the sports are sort of like a little depressing with no fans. If I don't know if any of our listeners, or if you've really watched anything, because I've watched some soccer and some baseball, but I think it might, and some UFC, but I think it might be the worst in NASCAR because it's just so. It also could have been due to the weather because it was kind of like a gloomy day, but like it was kind of dark and depressing. I mean, there was just absolutely no one there, and usually they have every seat filled at a NASCAR event. So
Right. Well, with the KBO, what they've done is when you're watching on TV, that they have these natural sounds of fans and maybe like hot dog, like you'll hear.
hmm
But it would sound like if there was a full, stadium of people, and when you watch those games on TV, like you hear that and you see that, but like at a NASCAR, there is no sound that you fill the stadium with. It's just the cars and it's loud. It's
exactly. Usually, you just hear the cars going by and the engines revving and that stuff, anyways.
right. So it's weird The only thing that's weird about it is watching these cars race around and there's nobody in the stands. Whereas it would be weird to watch, even weirder to watch like baseball or even soccer with no fans in the stadium. And you see in that soccer game, I saw everybody was on the bench, socially distanced, and they all had on masks. So, Jason, we've had some NASCAR action. Soccer has returned. We've had the KBO, and something that we were really looking forward to that unfortunately just came to its end was this week we saw the last two episodes of The Last Dance. And that was a 10-part series that people were really looking forward to. And because of the situation we had at hand, it was released earlier than it was supposed to be scheduled for. So it was something that a lot of people, a lot of athletes, anybody you can think of that's been really craving sports was looking forward to. And now it's reached its end, and now we don't really have a clear picture as to when baseball, the MLB, even the NBA will be making its return, although we will have some to talk about later because some NBA practice facilities, they have reopened for players to come and get some practice in. But we'll touch on that at a certain point later in the show. So, Jason, let's break it right down. Let's get to our winners and losers from last night. All right, so my first winner from the last two episodes of The Last Dance is Steve Kerr's cargo shorts. So the thing about these cargo shorts, so this was at the Bulls parade in Hyde Park in Chicago, their celebration parade, if you will. And they had showed Steve Kerr came out to talk to the crowd, talk to the fans, and he was wearing these cargo shorts. And Jason, I know you are familiar with me and my affiliation with cargo shorts. I used to wear them back in the day. They are great in a sense. They have a lot of pockets, which you can have a lot of different uses for. But Steve Kerr really brought those to life. You can't see the shoes he's wearing, but like if he was wearing New Balances, like a pure marshmallow white colored New Balance, I wouldn't be surprised. People were making fun of this all over Twitter the night of The Last Dance. And someone even said, I couldn't find the tweet, but it was this picture that you're looking at. And the caption was, all right, kids, who wants a hamburger and who wants a hot dog? Because it's the total vibe of like Steve Kerr like being at a family barbecue or something. So it was great. I loved it. Great to see him representing those cargo shorts. And yeah, those were my winner for that was my winner for the last two episodes.
So my winner of last night's episodes was Dennis Rodman, and he might honestly be the biggest winner of the whole series overall, obviously other than Michael Jordan. But I believe it was during the Eastern Conference Finals, might have been the NBA Finals, but I'm pretty sure it was the Eastern Conference Finals, where it was in between games, and Dennis was unable to be found. No one on the team or the media could find him anywhere. And it turns out that he took a plane to Michigan and ended up in Auburn Hills at the Palace and was part of NWO, which is the New World Order, which for those unfamiliar with WCW or WWE as it's known now, New World Order was pretty much one of the scripted storylines of Hulk Hogan and some of the other wrestlers that were trying to take over the entire industry as a whole and kind of push out Vince McMahon and the people in charge. And they went under the name New World Order. And last night in the documentary, we just see Dennis Rodman come out smoking a cigar, strutting his way up to the main stage with Hulk Hogan in front of, tens of thousands of fans at the Palace. And it's just crazy to think that he would like do such a thing literally in the middle of one of the most important series that, he was a part of. And the funny thing is I read a tweet from someone somewhere saying he got fined, or the Bulls, I think it was him, he got fined $20,000 or $25,000 to do this. But I guess the WCW paid him like $200,000 to do this. And they asked one of his teammates what they thought about that. And he said, well, I just think he's a good businessman, if you ask me. It sounds like a
Wow.
pretty good deal. And then after they end up winning their sixth championship, he's seen on the couch with Carmen Electra and asks her to kiss the trophy, and they kiss it together. And I mean, this guy had to be the biggest winner of last night. I mean, everything he did was just amazing, and
Yeah.
left
I,
me appalled.
I don't blame you. What's crazy is he only did this for the one night. It was at least what they made it seem in the
Yeah,
documentary was he had escaped practice and joined the NWO, came out, everyone knew it was Rodman. He even had a chair and smashed someone over with the chair. So
yeah,
it wasn't like he was just standing around like with Hulk Hogan looking like a boss. I mean, he was fully engaged in what he was doing. And to make $200,000 off of that in one night, or even, I mean, it didn't last more than a week, if that. Like, it was probably just that one night or 2 days. I mean, crazy. So that
well,
$25,000 fine is nothing.
slap on the wrist. It's nothing. And
Yeah.
I just think it's crazy. Like, let's just say you're a big fan of both the NBA and wrestling, and you're just at this event in Auburn Hills at the Palace. The last person in the world you're expecting to come out from the stage is Dennis Rodman. He has a game like the next day or 2 days from then. Like
Right.
you've just no idea that he's coming out. So I think that'd be amazing as a fan. And kind of as a parallel today, like I just can't imagine like Giannis just showing up at WrestleMania in the middle of the Eastern Conference final. Like I just can't even picture that happening. It's the craziest thing to me.
Right. And like that wasn't the first time. He went to Vegas in the middle of the season too. So it's just crazy how players stretch the rules and really didn't care back then in such a time like playoff mode and like it's crazy. But we're talking about Dennis Rodman and all of the crazy things that he did. So my loser of the last two episodes was the reporters that chased after Rodman. So this is actually when Rodman had made his return from the NWO after he was wrestling, quote unquote, and no one knew where he was. Obviously, Rodman showed up, and they had said, like, the PR guy for the Bulls, basically you see him say, like, there's 300 media, there's 300 reporters out there. They're all looking for Rodman. They want to know his whereabouts. They want to know, what's been up. Where you been, buddy? And so they had him sneak out of, like, this back escape route, if you will. And Jason, I thought was really cool because you had sent me this from Darren Rovell on Twitter. He said, Gate 3.5, the Dennis Rodman escape through was brought to the United Center from Chicago Stadium. It was the iconic gate at the old stadium that players entered and exited through. So you can see here, that was the gate that Rodman ran out of. And in the documentary, you see, like, he's kind of looking, like, peering out, like, the coast is clear. And so, like, Rodman goes to the bus, and the documentary will cut to, you see all the reporters in the lobby, and then it cuts back to Rodman running up the stairs and outside towards the bus. And then they show all the reporters like running up the stairs trying to chase after Rodman. And it's crazy because, like, from like a journalist perspective, like there was no way that they were all standing there like, whoa, where'd you go? Like someone had to have been wandering, one of the reporters, and then it spread like wildfire. Like someone was probably like, he's dipping out, this entrance, and then they all just ran. They never got to him. It was like a great scene, just a little bit of humor in between all the madness there. I thought those reporters missed out and big time losers.
100%. I mean, it was just crazy to see the perspective of all those reporters and the cameras sprinting up after him after the stairs, and
Right.
it was just wild. So
Yeah.
Dennis Rodman, a winner and deeming other people's losers in today's episode.
Yeah.
Very
Crazy.
impactful guy, to say the least.
All right, Jason. So now let's hit your final loser of the night, and that would be.
So my final loser of the night is delivery pizza services in the greater Salt Lake area. On the right there is a map of Salt Lake City. It might be a little hard to see for some of you. But, yeah, I mean, they supposedly gave Michael Jordan food poisoning before that game. And in a time right now, especially when, you're supposed to support your local businesses and, cooking might be hard one night and you want to order in. So probably a lot of people are going to be having a second thought about ordering some pizza in the state of Utah tonight
Yeah.
because they obviously they're not keeping their stuff up to code. But an honorable mention for a winner last night that wasn't part of the episode was DiGiorno. For those watching on YouTube, you can see this tweet in front of you. For those listening, DiGiorno Pizza tweeted out last night, delivery pizza, go figure. So, all the frozen pizza brands, specifically DiGiorno, huge win for them last night. And I think that's going to transition us to talking about The Last Dance as a whole. But we'll start on this pizza topic that we have here because, Brandon, I don't know if I buy this story. Because for the 20 years in between this event happening and this documentary being made, we were told it was the flu and that it was the flu game. And then last night, Sunday, we get this elaborate story about how they were calling every food place in the entire city and nothing was open besides this one pizza place, which I find hard to believe because if there's one pizza place open at night, late at night, there's got to be at least two or three. And they order this pizza for Michael, and 5 guys show up at the door to deliver it, and then Michael eats the whole pizza himself, and nobody else had a slice. I think, one, the 5 guys showing up is super suspicious. Like, if you're trying to inflict someone with food poisoning, you don't need 5 people to do it. Just a delivery guy could have gone and done it. And they don't necessarily know that the pizza is for Michael Jordan because, as we know, Mike used a lot of, fake names, and perhaps when his trainer or whoever was ordering it, they used it under their name. So the 5 people showing up in the middle of the night to deliver a pizza baffles me. And then on top of that, he's with his trainer, and his trainer is okay with him eating an entire pizza by himself the night before one of the biggest games of his career. It just doesn't add up for me.
Yeah, I was shocked to hear because Jordan was I wasn't really watching, but I was listening. And he was like talking about pizza, and it kind of just like went in one ear and out the other. And then I realized what was going down. I was like, well, wait a minute. This whole time, I thought that he was sick, like had the flu. And it raises so many questions because I think he was talking about how it was really late in the morning and like nothing was open. The only thing that was open was pizza. And like you had said, his trainer was with him, and I guess gave him the approval to eat the pizza at night. But it doesn't add up. I mean, did the pizza place know that it was Jordan? Like, how did they know?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they'd have any way of knowing.
And if 5 guys showed up to my apartment and I was Michael Jordan with this pizza, well, first I would have thought like they were gonna like beat him up. That was what it seemed like it was gonna allude to.
That's what I thought too. It reminded me of a film from like a Scorsese mob movie, and like the Cosa Nostra, the mafia were coming after him to do something to him. Like
right.
five people. That's overkill.
Right. So if anything, they are in the wrong for whoever did this, supposedly, for sending 5 people, because right off the bat, I would be so suspicious and be like, what is this? And I probably wouldn't even eat the pizza. I would
exactly. When 5 people show up to deliver your pizza, that doesn't raise any red flags to you. Like, that's not just the weirdest thing in the world. And then you continue to polish that thing from first slice to last, all on your own. It just doesn't add up.
No. And you knew, too, as soon as he said that, I was like, wow, the flu game was really the pizza game. Like, what was it? I mean, it could have been bad cheese, an old pepperoni, something maybe was a little old, lying around for too long.
That was my next
Um,
question. How do you food poison a pizza? How do you properly go about that? And
maybe
how do you and
maybe
how
they
do you
trip.
food poison it in a way that it doesn't have him so sick that he's hospitalized? You
Right,
know what I
right.
mean?
Because how can you play? He played that whole game, and granted, he was tired, and you could tell that he was not himself, and something was wrong. But what? I mean, it doesn't add up. It could
And
have been, something that they dropped on there, because then you got pepperonis and you got the cheese grease, and it all kind of looks like one pool of grease or whatever, but really there was like droplets. I mean, you don't know. Something I want to bring up that I thought was hysterical was Kevin Love uh, put this picture on Instagram. If you can read that,
I cannot, but
so
if you
I,
could
I
read it
figured
for
it
me.
was. So it says I ate the pizza all by myself. Nobody else ate the pizza.
Yeah, that's the most relatable thing he said during the whole documentary.
Yeah, and Kevin Love captioned, he said, "Been there,"
Yep.
and I was like, "Who hasn't?" But like, it's just crazy how this was. I mean, Jordan himself said it, so like, it's
You got to take it
credible.
with I don't know. I think because he said it himself, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And even if he did get food poisoned, how does, let's say this pizza place is the only place open, whatever. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. How do you
Sure.
know Michael Jordan's going to get hungry when he's hungry? You're working that shift and that you're going to be delivering it to him. And does that pizza place just so happen to have stuff to make their food, induce food poisoning on hand? They just have a little vial of, something that says, food
For
poisoning on it
Michael.
for MJ when he calls at this hour on this day.
Yeah.
And another thing is, there's been rumors of, before this documentary came out, that the flu game was actually a hangover game because he
Mm-hmm.
was, out drinking and gambling and doing whatever the night before. And a lot of people argue, well, you wouldn't be hungover at a 7 p.m. tip off if you were drinking the night before. And that might be true. You may not be hungover, but your body is still a little out of it. You're not in tip top competitive shape after a heavy night of drinking.
Yeah.
But I think, it's gonna that secret's gonna die with Michael. And I don't know why you would change the story after 20 years of telling us it's the flu. I mean, there's no harm in telling us you thought it was food poisoning, but why not tell us that in 1998? Why tell us that in 2020?
Yeah. You would think it's the opposite, right? Like, you would think
Exactly.
that he, granted, he's, not telling the truth or whatnot, but you would think that he actually got food poisoned, and that he wanted to lie to the public and be like, that wasn't the case. I actually had the flu,
And
and
what
it doesn't add up. And this is going to be a mystery, I think, for a long time as to whether or not MJ is telling the truth. And we know that he had been, sipping his fair share of whiskey or bourbon or whatever it was, the other
still
documentary.
is.
You just don't know.
And
Something too.
I oh,
Well,
I
I wanted to add this.
go on.
Although, if you want to talk about the pizza, we can keep
I have
talking.
one last pizza comment.
Okay.
So my last comment about it, and this is just me kind of hypothesizing here, is that he changed that narrative purposely because of what has happened with the coronavirus and sports in the world right now. Because if you think about it, if he had a fever and he was sick, in today's world, especially after this whole corona thing, there is no chance they are letting you out there to go play and
Hmm.
infect other people and get others sick. So, I think he kind of wanted people to be discussing this pizza narrative, whether it be true or false, rather than him being irresponsible and going out there and playing and possibly getting other people sick on the court.
So now you just add a completely different twist, a little conspiracy theory. But at the same time, who knows when that part of the interview was filmed? I mean, it could have been a year ago.
Exactly. We have no idea.
Well, that story will not die. I'll tell you that much. There's more to come. I would not be surprised. I wasn't sure if you saw this. A lot of what I had been doing was looking in like the home of Jordan, of where the interview is taking place and whatnot, because with coronavirus today and everything's online and people are doing stuff in their homes, you always look to see, well, what do people have on their walls and whatnot, but especially a guy like Michael Jordan. Like, this is your one chance to get to see what the inside of his house looks like. And it came out and said that none of those interviews actually took place in his home,
Yep.
and that it actually took place in 3 other people's houses that closely resembled Jordan's, and that he basically gave the approval and was like, we can do it in this house because this house resembles my house, so therefore, it'll work. So I was wondering, like, what were your thoughts on that, and why make that decision? And another point, now that I think about it, was that definitely had to have been done before coronavirus, because if that interview was filmed, in March, there's no way, I don't think, that a random family would be like, sure, you can have this whole camera crew and MJ come in our house,
I don't
in a
know. If
time of
Michael
quarantine.
Jordan if he asked me, I'd let him in. It's Michael
Okay,
Jordan.
I'd,
Say no to
I'd
Michael
let him in
Jordan?
too. I don't think you'd want to do the interview in your room or mine. I mean, maybe,
I
maybe.
don't think so, especially with the Bad Boys thing right there, and then I got the Sweet Repeat, their other championship on the wall over there. So probably not
He's
mine.
out.
Yeah, but I thought that was interesting. I mean, I think for whatever reason he didn't want really people to really see the inside of his home, which is cool. I mean, it's your house. If you don't want to invite people in and let them see it, that's your prerogative. That's your thing. But also, his old house in Chicago is up for sale right now. I don't know if you knew that.
No, his old house. So like where he lived when he
When
was
he was
playing with the
playing with
Bulls.
the Bulls and stuff, there's a big
Hmm.
23 on the gate, basketball court, tennis court, all that stuff. It was listed for 30 million, and now it's down to I think 18 and a half. I think they cut it in half. But I was reading some of the comments too. I guess the location's like horrible. It's like a little over an hour out from the city, and it's like next to a highway or something like that.
Really?
But I mean, it'd still be super cool to live in Michael's house.
Sure. Especially you got the 23 on the gate. I mean, like you imagine your buddies pulling up for like poker night or whatever, and it's just like boom, the 23, the gate slowly opens. Like, that's someone is for sure buying that house. We were also talking too. I'd seen that a pair of game worn cleats that MJ
Yes,
wore in the minors sold for $93,000 at an auction. Crazy.
that's crazy. I mean, can you imagine spending almost $100,000 on a pair of cleats?
That you'll never wear
You're
and that
never
you're
gonna
just going to
wear,
stare at.
and they're for a minor league player too. Like you're not even like it's not even like oh I'm getting Alex Rodriguez's cleats from the World Series or whatever. You're getting, minor league Michael Jordan's
Michael
cleats
Jordan.
for 100 grand.
I mean, hey, it's still,
It's still awesome.
yeah. But you are right. I mean, would you rather have that, or would you rather get, like, I don't know, a Babe Ruth signed bat? I mean, that would probably go for 10 times as much. But regardless, if you're paying that much for MJ signed cleats, it's a little over the top.
So, kind of building off of that cleat thing, I saw a tweet from Darren Rovell, who we mentioned earlier, and I don't like mentioning him too much. I actually hate Darren, like hate him. But he tweeted out last night the entire backboard and basket where Jordan hit his final shot with the Bulls to win the sixth title was sold in 2015 for like $41,825. So call it 42. So it's crazy that the basket that he shot on to make his, the game-winning shot to secure the sixth ring for him and the Chicago Bulls franchise is less than like half the price of those cleats.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
what?
well, you can also like the whole pizza scenario. There's a lot of
Yeah.
suspicious things that we learned from those last two episodes. I mean, granted, we didn't know that about the rim and backboard selling for almost $42,000. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, why would that be the case? And they were also talking about too in the documentary of everyone tried to get that perfect last photo because everyone knew it was the last dance and like this could be it. And if you capture that photo, like that's something that's remembered for years and years down the road. But whoever has that rim and backboard, you're not playing with it. You're not shooting on that thing. It's just another thing. Where do you put that? What do you do with that thing?
I mean, if you got 42 grand to spend on a rim and backboard, you probably have some room in your house or on your property that you can find a spot for it.
Jason, before the documentary came out, there was a lot of word that the Jordan that you're going to see isn't the Jordan that you're used to, that he's portrayed as the bad guy, maybe he's the villain. So after we've watched the documentary as a whole and we've seen all the footage, everything that was unseen to the public eye, what are your thoughts on that persona that Jordan really brought to the table, whether it was on the court, as a teammate, as an opponent, or in the locker room? I mean, did you agree with some of his decisions and how he acted and treated his teammates, or what did you think about his behavior?
Well, I think undoubtedly he pushed and motivated his teammates when they needed to be pushed and pushed them obviously to great success. They won 6 titles. And they did back to back to back 2 separate times only because of his hiatus playing baseball. But I think there are different ways of motivating people than the way that he went about it. I mean, you could see in the last night's episodes how he was talking to Scotty Burrell in their locker room, and he was, Burrell was kind of saying to him, well, this is going to be it, tonight could be like the last time you see me, whatever. And, you're going to be in LA, whatever. He's like, who knows? Like, maybe I might fly out there and, say what's up to you. I'm coming with you. And Michael's like, Scotty, if you come out there, I will beat your ass. Like, that is just like, you can be kind to your teammates, or if you don't like a guy, you don't necessarily have to voice to them that you're going to beat them up and that you hate them and think that they're worthless. You can kind of be more passive about it, maybe a little passive aggressive. But I do think this documentary definitely painted Jordan in sort of a darker light, and I think he did have reason to be concerned about why people would perceive it that way. Because he was a dick, pretty much. I mean, he was not kind to his teammates and obviously not kind to the other team. But I just think there's a different way about, motivating people and going about it other than punching your teammates in the face, telling them you're going to beat their ass, saying they're no good. And, maybe it's because it's our generation and we're not old enough, but the side of Michael Jordan I knew outside of playing on the basketball court and watching highlights and old games and all that type of stuff is from Space Jam, where he's, with his kids, he's talking to Bugs Bunny, he's nice as can be and just a cool guy. And that's, who I kind of perceived him to be. And this documentary comes out and you learn that he's not the nicest guy in the world and pretty far from it.
Yeah, I agree, because as a kid, I mean, it's not like we weren't alive watching Jordan, play. So all we knew of him was from Space Jam, and you could look up his highlights or his stats. There was no YouTube, 15 years ago. But regardless, they even showed when he was, I want to say it was during like the 98 season. And this was like, right before Jordan had retired. And they were showing like some of the younger guys, the newer guys on the team, they were practicing. They were practicing, they were shooting that crazy, like pretty much out of bounds 3 from like where all like the broadcasters and everyone sits. No one even came close. And then Jordan with like his cockiness, and you knew he was going to make it on the first try, just goes up, bang, whets the shot. But it was that. I mean, that wasn't the big picture there. It was you just saw how he was sitting and looking at the younger guys on the team and what his thought process was and the things that he was saying. But you would think, I mean, you knew that the rebuild was inevitable, and to have a guy like Jordan, you didn't really see him teaching these guys sort of like the way, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You would think that a guy as powerful and respected as Jordan, especially at the time he was still playing, like if I was one of the younger guys, I would want him to come over and, at least show me something, tell me something. In sports, that's the great part of having a veteran player go to a team that might be young or that's in a rebuild, because those young players have a lot to learn from that veteran player, and we really didn't get to see that side at all from MJ.
Yeah, I have two comments about that. One is those are layups for the Golden State Warriors nowadays. I mean, that's just a regular Warriors practice. You see Steph and Clay, and at least when KD was on the team, I mean, they're pulling up from there all the time. And I've even heard that Steve Kerr and Steph, go at it from deep after practice and have like a little game going on, because Steve Kerr is actually like the all-time 3-point percentage leader in NBA history. I don't know if you knew that. But the other thing is, in that documentary, you discussed how none of those younger guys were, at least it seemed like Michael was not really taking any of those guys under his wing or telling them what they need to be do or helping them improve. But one thing I do know is after he came out of retirement for the second time and he was on the Washington Wizards, him and Rip Hamilton were very close. And I know that Rip learned a lot of things about basketball from MJ and learned a lot about his mid-range game and, coming off screens and doing a lot of those different types of things. And it makes me wonder, why was Rip Hamilton so special? Or is it that Michael Jordan at that point in his career wasn't who he used to be and kind of realized, I can't athletically give to the game the way I used to and put on these incredible scoring performances and high-flying dunks. Is there another way I can give to the game? And in his later years, did he then realize, oh, I can help mentor these young guys and teach them a thing or two that I know from all the years I've played and stuff? So that's what I wonder, is at what point did he kind of realize that he could do those types of things and should be doing those types of things, and what pushed him to make that decision?
Yeah, it's it's rather ironic that you make that statement, because Jordan the other day basically came out and said, I can still beat anybody that's on the Hornets.
Yeah, the team he
owns them. He said, I can beat anybody on the Hornets in the game of one-on-one easily. And Miles Bridges, former MSU basketball player, responded basically and was like, all right, like, let's go. So sure, Jordan still has that cocky side to him, a little bit of arrogance. I mean, I would if I'm the GOAT,
right?
Hardly.
Why not?
And I'm sure he could. I'm sure there are still some young guys in the league today that Jordan could probably easily beat one-on-one. So now that The Last Dance is over, a lot of people have discussed, well, when is the LeBron documentary going to come out? There's clearly going to be one at some point in time. Now, we don't know when, considering, one, that he's filming Space Jam 2. We don't know when that's releasing. Although, is it? I thought maybe they said it was coming out in 2021.
It's next year. It is next year it's coming out.
Okay. So he's been busy with that. But I doubt he's going to want to get started on this documentary before he even decides to retire. But who knows? Maybe something could be in the works. So, Jason, I wanted to know, when do you think that this documentary could come into play?
Yeah, I actually heard that ESPN or someone, they had filmed Kobe's entire last year, similar to the way The Last Dance was filmed and, that whole 98 season was filmed. But my concern with that one is that Kobe's last season as a Laker was, like, everyone's going to hate me for this. I don't really care. It was horrible. I mean, The team only won. They didn't even win 20 games. They were struggling. Kobe's knees were shot. He was not really in a great place. His last game and last performance, putting up 60 points was obviously sensational and something I'm never going to forget. But the season as a whole was a wash. I mean, it was not a great season, but obviously I'm sure they have film of Kobe, throughout the years and all that different type of stuff. So I think we'll get a Kobe one before we get a LeBron one.
Hmm.
And then to answer your question about when we'll get the LeBron one, I don't really know, because the thing with LeBron is that Jordan's is kind of easier in the sense that, you have the 6 rings and you can go over that and you can talk about the baseball break in between and it works kind of perfectly. LeBron's journey is, a little sort of different as he struggled in
Yeah.
Cleveland to start, then went to Miami, won 2 out of his 3 years there, then went back to Cleveland, won the ring, and now he's in LA. Um, so the storytelling there is definitely going to be a little bit different. And in addition to that is, you know, after Jordan retired and then came back again with the Wizards, he wasn't, who he used to be. So they obviously chose to leave that out of the documentary for that reason. But the
Hmm.
thing with LeBron is he almost seems to get better with age, or doesn't really seem to get that much worse, and finds new ways to add new parts to his game each and every year. I mean, right before the season canceled, people were saying he could challenge Giannis to take MVP for the season, and Giannis seemed to be running away with it. I mean, LeBron is averaging over 10 assists a game, 30 points a game. He's a walking triple double almost every year of his career. And so when he calls it quits, it's going to be interesting to see whether that's due to his play deteriorating, or if he's just simply I've been playing basketball for 20 whatever years, like this is just it for me. And also a lot of people believe that he wants to play in the league with his son, and his
Mm.
son is soon to be entering college or perhaps the G League. We don't know what's going to happen with that. That's
Right.
been interesting to watch recently. um, so I think LeBron's got some more years left in the tank, definitely. And especially, just now as this season got cut off, the Lakers were the first team in the West. I mean, him and Anthony Davis are running through everyone that is not the Los Angeles Clippers. So it should be interesting. You would think, maybe perhaps he'd be like Jordan. We'd have to wait 20 years after he retires to get a documentary from him, but perhaps not. Perhaps they'll get it together sooner. But the thing is that when LeBron came into the league, and when Jordan came into the league, the technology we had to film and capture all of these moments has completely evolved and changed and revolutionized. So I
Yeah.
think he'll have a lot more footage to work with, and a lot more behind the scenes stuff to work with, and just should be interesting to see how they incorporate all that and put that together.
Yeah, well, it could be something even completely different. Like I would think that Kobe for sure, with his passing and all, that it would be documentary based. Whereas LeBron, it could be like a full on TV show. It could be a podcast. It could be all sorts of things. There's really no limit. Like you had said, with all the technology and everything that we have these days, it's just crazy to think of, especially too how quickly it could be put together. Because for Jordan, I mean, you had to go through years and years of archives of all that footage. Um, and granted, there was, I don't know how easy was it to have like wireless mics, like to have players mic'd up. Because I felt that that was the best part, the coolest parts of the documentary of The Last Dance was getting to see those interactions and those conversations with Jordan, in the locker room and with players and whatnot. A bit of a side note too. I don't know if you'd seen this, but I think Steph Curry came out and said that if the NBA returns with no fans, basically everyone get ready because the amount of trash talking that you're going to
Oh, I
hear
am so excited for that.
is great. It's going to be insane. I mean, we've seen with the UFC how like you can hear the hits like clean as day. There's
Well,
no one there, no one's
in
cheering.
addition to hearing the hits and all of the holds and everything, there was it wasn't the last UFC. They just had 3 events in Florida, like all in a week. So I think it was the second one in the middle,
Mm.
um, where they were both on the ground. It's crazy the amount of respect these guys have for each other. Because while this guy is like trying to make the other guy tap out, and he has him in this crazy hold, he's saying like, "Man, I'm sorry, man. Like, like I got to do it to you." And the other guy's like, "Yeah, man, it's just all part of the job. Like, I totally get it." Like while they're trying to kill each other. So
Wow.
it's just crazy the stuff that we've been able to hear, and the stuff we will be able to hear as you touched on.
Yeah, right. That's something that we all have to look forward to. And you think of that too from a player standpoint. There's so many times where, and I think of Melo as a good example. And I've seen a lot of videos where like he goes and like gets a rebound or someone gets a board and he's like, fuck out of here. And
Yeah,
like you hear it and that picks up so easily
because
on
he
the
screams it.
broadcast. And obviously they don't, you're not gonna bleep it out because it happens so quickly and like it's not like he's mic'd up and you can hear it clear as day. So
Mhm.
that's something too that these players are going to have to think of if that's the case in terms of trash talking. They got to watch what they say because the only thing you're going to hear is the dribbles, the squeaks of the shoes, and the players, and
What it
that's it.
what it's made me think about is like how in 2K or any other video game you can like adjust the sound
The
sliders,
sound.
and you
I
can
was
take the
thinking that.
crowd completely out of it and hear everything else.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to be like. And you're saying they might have to be careful, which I agree with, but I think a lot of fans such as myself are excited to hear this trash talk and stuff they have to say, because I think that just adds to the game more so, and adds a dimension to the game that fans have not really been able to hear before.
Well, I'm excited. Totally look forward to hearing it. I'm saying they have to be careful for the sake of if they say something that maybe we don't like that we shouldn't hear or like that they don't want us hearing. Like if they just fully just go at it like cussing like crazy, but also for the sake of like television and broadcasting, like what is that adjustment going to be like for those producers that are in the truck, like watching the game and having to okay, like get ready, like someone just like that change is going to be really big for pretty much basketball. The NFL, one can only
I'm kind of
imagine.
scared to hear NFL, man, because the way these guys get hit and you're hearing their like bones crack and stuff, like that is gonna be like really brutal.
Yeah, but there is. I would say at this point, I'm a little more confident in having the idea that some fans will be in attendance um, at NFL games. I mean, well, that's just a waiting game, and we'll
I
have to
mean,
wait
we
and
we
see.
don't know. We're just
We
exactly.
we don't know, but it feels like states are reopening and things are slowly coming back to normal. So for the case being though, like the NBA with the season that it's already it's postponed. So when it's makes its eventual return, it makes sense for there to not be any fans. Baseball, the season hasn't even started. Who knows? Maybe halfway through they'll allow a third of the max attendance allowed or something like that. But yeah, with the NFL not starting for some time now, there is that chance that we'll, either it's a win-win because you either have fans and you can go to the games and watch, or you can hear everything taking place on that field from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, and I read some stuff about in the NFL, and you touched on this earlier in the episode that they're thinking about pumping in fake fan noise into the stadiums when they do come back. And it's funny because I saw a lot of stuff on social media about people saying, well, the Falcons have been doing this for years, because the Falcons did actually get caught pumping in fake fan noise even while there were fans there, just to make it that much louder for other teams. So I mean, if they don't do that, it's going to be crazy because you might have a big 3rd and 8 that might decide the game, and it's just dead silent in there. Like it's just going to be really interesting to see what they decide to end up doing.
Yeah. Well, what's good for the NBA is several teams, in fact, 17 of them have announced that they have already opened their practice facilities or that they'll be open for voluntary workouts as of this week. So that's a great sign because if that's the case and players are allowed to, voluntarily come back to practice, how much longer between now and actually getting to go out and play do we have? So again, that's another waiting game.
Well,
And
the thing is the players and the owners recently this past week or maybe 2 weeks ago were all asked, what do you want this season to resume? Do you want it to come back? And both the players and owners did agree, saying they do want to finish out this year. But it is now back in the hands of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, and I think they gave him like 2 to 4 weeks to make a decision on it. So everyone's just kind of sitting here waiting to see what he has to say about it. And that's obviously not an easy decision. And it would not surprise me if he does not wait until the very last day to make that decision, because you just don't know what's going to happen with this virus and certain states being open and closed and all that stuff. So I'm sure he's going to be taking his sweet time with that.
no, I agree, Jason. There is the potential for a second wave, and we just don't know what could happen. So in the meantime, we'll have to wait it out and see. There is the good news that facilities are opening and players do want the season to return. Owners have agreed. So still had to be a little bit patient, but
Another
this is a good sign for the things to come.
another thing about that is, of the 17 teams that are doing this, are they going to have an edge? They've been in the gym like longer to the season being resumed and have been working out and getting those minutes in, and how important that is. So, my question is, are these teams going to have an edge? And if you look at them, a lot of the teams that are resumed are playoff teams, or the ones that are contending. So you have teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Rockets, you got the Bucks, the Heat. So there's a lot of these teams that I think are kind of thinking, we could use this as a time to kind of pull ahead and be more in shape than the guys that we come across for the remainder of the year.
Sure, that's a great point. You also think of players on those, playoff-bound teams. How much work have they been putting in by themselves? If they're thinking, well, there's the potential that in a month, we're going to finish out the season, or in, however so long it takes to finally return. Whereas maybe like, teams on or players on teams that have no chance of making the playoffs, what have they been doing? Are they slacking? Are they staying out of the gym? Are they just spending time with their family? So
Watching
there's a
Netflix,
right.
who
So there's a
knows?
lot of variables, and where do these players have access to the right equipment and whatnot? One would think that most guys have weights and probably a court or somewhere to shoot on, but these are just things that the public, we don't necessarily know. And will be interesting to see that if, in some cases, does this give teams the edge and advantage over other teams getting to practice before other teams can.
Certainly. And on that note, I think we will continue on our basketball topic. Sorry, for those of you not that big of fans of basketball, this is a very basketball intensive episode,
Mm-hmm.
just with everything in the Last Dance and kind of what's been just going on in sports right now.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just something that I came across Twitter and brought to Brandon's attention. I don't know who is thinking about it or who's upset about it still, but it's the 1962 NBA MVP race. And I haven't seen every season of the NBA, but this MVP race has got to be like the craziest one of all time, Brandon.
I mean, when is the last time that we have seen a top five finish for the MVP race where you have, well, in this case, you have four players, 4 out of 5 that are averaging more than 30 points per game. So we can dive into, if you want to go into specifics of
Sure.
who won that year, 1 through 5, and talk a little bit about their stats.
So this year, Bill Russell ended up winning MVP, finished first in the votes, and he had 18.9 points, 23.6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, which is like for a center, that's an MVP stat line all the way. Like, I agree, no problem with that. Crazy stats. But then you go, okay, well, who finished second in voting? Let's take a look. So Wilt Chamberlain finished second. He averaged 50.4 points per game and 25.7 rebounds per game. Like, what? Like, that is insane. You just don't hear that ever.
No. You're averaging at least half of what a team would score, on average. And that's just only from the one player. If you're putting up 50 points a game, that's crazy. And how you're not like unanimous, I don't understand.
And if you think about it, in the last dance, I'm sorry to keep going back to it, but last night we saw the Utah Jazz in the NBA Finals only put up 54 points in one of the games.
Yeah.
And Wilt Chamberlain is out here scoring 50.5 by himself.
Averaging that
across the whole season. I mean, that's crazy. I'm sure that's the year he scored 100 in a game. Like, it has to be. But I mean, and then you look at, almost 20, averaging 26 rebounds a game. I mean, that's nuts too. Players just don't do that. So, that's your number 2 guy. Then you go to number 3, who is the big O, Oscar Robertson. He averaged 30.8 points, 12.5 boards, and 11.5 assists. So he was a walking triple-double and finished third in MVP voting.
It's like, what? This is just crazy because you think of maybe like the top 4, the top 5 MVP race today, right? It's the usual guys. It's Kawhi, it's James, it's LeBron, it's Giannis now. I mean, those guys are always putting up great numbers, and typically you can make the decision of ruling someone out, whether or not their team, who made it further in the playoffs, who's winning, who's doing what. But in this case, there is no clear cut, this guy should totally finish fourth, overcoming in second. I mean, everyone's averaging above 30 points, and
except the guy who won it, which is just crazy.
Except Bill Russell. But and then you have Wilt Chamberlain, 25.7 rebounds. So you think about, if you're averaging nearly 26 rebounds a game, on the other end of that's just crazy to think of everything that's possible from that. Like, how much more scoring opportunities you had.
How many he created 26 more possessions for his team a game.
Yeah, and you came in second.
And if you think about it, with Oscar Robertson and the stats he put up, that triple-double, a couple years ago, we saw Russell Westbrook do just that, and everyone was like, we have to give him the award. Like, it is, without a question. He just did something that hasn't been done in so long. I mean, it's just crazy what he did, and everyone gave him that MVP award. And Oscar Robertson does the same thing. He gets third in MVP voting.
Yeah. Well, it's just it's a totally different world. There was no Twitter. There was no social media to argue, basically, about who deserved what. There was no TV, really, no Sports Center, nothing to discuss these things. So it was just left to the hands of the voters, and that decision was made. But that's crazy that that's just kind of coming out now, and something fun to think about and discuss, all those years ago, how different the game of basketball was compared to today, and how easy it was to rule out guys in the MVP race. It's just, those numbers are unheard of in the game today.
And then you go to fourth, and you have Elgin Baylor, 38.3 points per game, 18.5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. I mean, this guy's fourth. And then fifth, you got
Yeah.
the logo, Jerry West, the guy who is the NBA logo, 30.8 points, 8 rebounds, 5.5 assists. I mean, it's just crazy. I
Yeah.
understand Bill Russell was, phenomenal and has obviously won the most rings in NBA history and obviously was a favorite of the media at the time. But Brandon, my question to you is, out of those 5 guys I just listed, who do you think should have won the MVP award that year?
I mean, I gotta say, Wilt. With that, when was the last time you saw someone average at least 40 points a game? I mean, 50 a game and
For a
27
season.
rebounds for a season. It's unheard of. The next time that happens, that player will be, who knows, the next quote unquote LeBron, the next Kobe. I mean, that's
I don't think it's ever going
beyond
to happen
me.
again.
I don't think it could happen again. I mean, if that's the case, what is the average amount of points that team would be scoring on a nightly basis? If you have a player that averages 50,
I
you're
mean,
at
you
least like
you would
you're also
think
riding the over on every one of those games.
that's true, but you would think that he would probably be the focal point of the offense and probably touching the ball pretty much every possession, scoring 50 a game. Um,
Right, and everyone else is scoring maybe 10 points. Like if that. Like your second best
10,
player
10
will
is
maybe.
crazy. Yeah, your second best player probably is out there, averaging 8 a night or something
Yeah.
like that. Um,
Something's yeah, because Will's got the ball the majority of the time. You're right.
But another thing that I thought interesting is, so, I mean, if you compare the guy who finished first, Bill Russell, with the guy who finished fourth, Elgin Baylor, you look at Bill Russell's numbers, okay, 19 points a game, 23.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, compared to Elgin Baylor's 38.3 points per game, 18.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. So their assists are exactly the same. Um, you look at their rebounds, Elgin had five less rebounds a game, but he was scoring 20 more points a game. So at what are you valuing here? Are rebounds that much more valuable than points? That only five more, even though Elgin's scoring 20 more points a game, that you're going to vote Bill Russell? And if that's the case, that you're valuing rebounds so much, you have to give it to Wilt Chamberlain, who's getting 26 a game. I mean, this just made no sense to me when I looked at it. But the NBA must have been super, super interesting to watch during this season in 1962.
So before we end with our final segment of this evening, we do have some news that we would like to discuss and bring to the table. So it was announced that the Staffords, Matthew and Kelly Stafford, are selling their $6.5 million home in Bloomfield Township. Well, I wouldn't call it home, more of a mansion. But the wife of Stafford, Kelly, says that there's nothing to read into the couple's decision to move to a different location. She says that there's no speculation needed. They're about to have their 4th child, and she personally does not want to live on a lake or have a pool with 4 children under the age of a little over 3. So that's the reason that the house is on the market. Their house is 12,295 square feet. And just looking at it, I mean, this thing is sick. I don't know why you would want to move out of that. And it seems like giving that reason of not wanting your kids to be surrounded by the pool and the water is a little bit absurd, if you will. Jason, do you think this has any speculation or anything to do with a possible trade or request to be traded on Stafford's end, or is this just happen to be a coincidence like Kelly says?
It's hard, as you said. It's really hard to read into, right? Because I heard a couple of different um, publications, such as
Mhm.
ESPN. I heard Pat McAfee on his podcast talking about it, saying, he was saying, well, it's because a new coach is going to come in after this season, and he's going to be traded and get out of here, and all this stuff, and he ended up correcting himself and saying reporting on what Kelly ended up saying in her Instagram story. which is where that little soundbite comes from. But it just doesn't make any sense at all, right? Because let's play out all the scenarios. So let's say the first scenario is right, Pat McAfee's right. We're gonna stink this year. New coach is gonna come in and try and trade him. Okay, so why are you selling your house now? You still have at least a whole another year and change in Detroit. So what is the point of moving out of it today? Two, let's say you're doing it for Kelly Stafford's reasons. You got a bunch of young kids who don't want to, you want to be careful of them, falling in the water or falling in the pool. Something can happen. When you're that wealthy, you have a nanny or a caretaker of some kind. And I know that they have had that. And I also know that Kelly spends a lot of time with her kids and would probably make sure that that doesn't happen. And the third thing is, instead of completely getting up and moving, why don't you build a fence? Isn't that a lot cheaper? Can't you just build a fence around the lake and the pool, and then you don't have to worry about them falling in? I mean, it literally makes zero sense at every turn.
Yeah, especially who would want to be in this situation before the season starts? Having to sell your house and move everything out. I mean, it just seems like a pain in the ass, and it's a little suspicious. I mean, there is reason to be suspicious of this, like you said, and it just feels like the reason given as to why they're moving just doesn't seem that credible. They've lived in that house for more than a year, right? If their kids are a little
They've
over
lived in that
3,
house for, I would say, over 5 years now.
Yeah.
Because I have some friends that they're on Long Lake. So I have some friends that live on that lake, and I've, been on the boats and swam past their house, a ton of times. And it's cool because you can say, well, wow, that's like our QB lives here. That's awesome. But it is definitely interesting. And you could also make the argument, well, with COVID and everything going on, there's a lot of consumer confidence that's dropping in the market right now. The housing market might not, be as strong in a couple months as it is right now. So it's a great time for them to sell, and they're going to make some money on it. But he's a franchise quarterback who's worth, over hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't think they're pinching pennies on a to them at least, on a $6 million house. It literally makes no sense to me.
Yeah. This raises several questions, just like the pizza incident with Jordan. So we don't really know, but the house is listed. It's up for sale. We have these supposed reasons as to why this is the case, and quite an interesting move. Odd timing, and yeah, we don't know if this means more than what's at stake, but
maybe it's
if haunted. There is, who knows? Well, you could definitely argue that there is, a chance that maybe Stafford wants out, or that he would eventually ask for a trade at some point. Because this is something that fans, we don't really think of, is when players get traded. Just in general, that process, what it's like having to move out of where they live and into a new place. So there's a lot of speculation here, and Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, well, two more things on that. One, the Staffords have always voiced that they love Detroit. They have given back a ton to the community, and they've seemed to be pretty happy being here. And Lion fans have always supported Matthew Stafford for the most part, by the overwhelming majority. I mean, there's not a lot of people that have thought that Stafford himself has been the problem. There's definitely been plenty of wrong in the organizations over his tenure here, but a lot of people have not pointed to him as that loose link. And additionally, I saw this in a tweet the other day, but it was a very valid point. Imagine being one of those Stafford kids, and you lived there when you were 1, 2, and 3 years old. And later on in life, you find out that was the house you used to live in, with the basketball court and the pool and living on the lake and all the cool stuff. You can check it out on, I believe, the Free Press has like a whole deep dive into like every room in the house and stuff. And they had an elevator in there. I don't know I just know if I was his kid, I'd be pretty upset about moving out of that house. Not that they can really realize what they're missing out on right now because they're so young. But
All right, guys. So this is our last segment of today's episode. Something that we've done before. We have our 4 blanks of the apocalypse. So today, our blank is the 4 worst rebrands of the apocalypse. This goes for any sort of food products, television networks, apps, anything that you can think of that's been completely redesigned. Jason and I listed our 4 worst rebrands. So I'm going to lead us off here and go with Trix as my first rebrand. So I'm sure a lot of you know and remember that Trix cereal used to be, as you can see on the left side, the left picture, it used to be the shape of the fruit. And it was awesome. Trix was like the cereal to eat as a kid. I don't know about you, Jason, but it was like Trix and Frosted Flakes. Like those were the 2. If you were at a friend's house or sleeping over a friend's house and like you were making breakfast the next day and they had Trix, like I would always go for Trix. It was something I didn't have in my house growing up because it was like super sugary and whatnot. But eventually they rebranded, and instead of like the fruit-shaped cereal, it became like colored balls that resembled the fruit. And I hated that. And that's the way it is now. And it's literally not the same at all. And I've tasted it. And like, yeah, the taste is like relatively the same. But there was just something about the old school Trix back in the day where it was shaped like fruit. And I hated that they made that decision.
but it says right there on the box, Brandon, new fruitier taste. And how would it? I mean, it's just like a psychological thing. If you're eating something that looks like fruit, you'd think it would taste more like fruit. And I gotta agree with you. Trix used to be like the coolest thing ever. I mean, you had the shapes of the bananas and the blueberries and the oranges and
Grapes.
all the grapes and
Bro, the
everything.
watermelons. Look at the water. Like, oh.
I mean, they I don't know why, what drove them away from doing that. I mean, probably you would imagine maybe the production cost of making Trix all into the same shape and, just changing up the color probably saves them a little bit of money. But
Sure.
it was definitely way cooler to have all the fruit inside of your cereal bowl. So I can definitely agree with you there.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think
Rest in peace.
So I think we will move on to my one of my worst rebrands of the apocalypse. And this is kind of the reason why we chose this category, because this actually did happen during the apocalypse. You could say it's trouble in Cereal Town because Fruit Loops decided to totally rebrand Toucan Sam. If you're listening, look this up. If you're watching along, I mean, you can just see this thing. They made him so incredibly soft. I mean, look at him. He just looks all like I don't know how to describe this for the people listening, but he looks like more cartoony. Like before he was kind of 3D and like an actual toucan and had his wings spread and his big beak open, and he just looked awesome and he was just super cool. And now you have this cartoony, 2D version. He's got his hands on his hips and stars and colors kind of exploding from his center. And I don't know. He just looks so soft. And one of my biggest critiques about it is like before his mouth was like very clearly open. Like he has a jaw and like a beak on top and a jaw. But on this one, it just looks, because it's flat, it's just like a circle mouth that's incorporated to part of the beak. And like, it just looks horrible to me. I hate it. I can't get over it.
He looks, this one, the new one looks like an anime version.
It does.
Like I've been trying to figure out, it looks so familiar, but that's totally what it is. It really resembles like an anime character. The one thing they did get right though is the tail. It's got the little 3 pieces and they're all the same color. But aside from that, I mean, look at how it's like, the wings. I mean, the wings on the OG fruit.
The wings like aren't even wings.
On Toucan Sam. Well, no, he has arms now. He's like, It's horrible. And the beak too. Look at the ratio of like black beak and the colors before, like two colors, three colors, to on the new guy. He's got like a rainbow. And the black part of his beak is very, very slim. So I'm not a fan of this one, Jason.
I think
Great
my
choice.
I think my best way to put this is before he was Toucan Samuel, and maybe now he's a Toucan Samantha. Like that's like the only way I can picture it. It just makes no sense to me. I don't know one person that has been
Appreciated.
that has said, "Wow, what a great idea," and this looks awesome. Every person I've talked to or have read about online that has discussed this has really just trashed this, and I wouldn't be surprised if they switch it back. But I mean, horrible decision by Fruit Loops. Definitely
Yeah.
trouble in Cereal Town.
Yeah. You said that exactly. So who knows? Maybe some changes to Toucan Sam, but for now, we are not a fan. We are not a fan. So my second worst rebranding is stadium name changes. So we had talked about this a little bit before we were recording, but it's something that really bugs me because so here we look at this example. So this is Safeco Field, where the Mariners play in Seattle. When I think of some of the icons like Ken Griffey Jr., Ichiro, Felix Hernandez, some of those guys that legends of the Mariners, I instantly think of like Safeco Field and that name in particular. Last season they changed the name to T-Mobile Park, which is horrible. It's a horrible name, and I hate that can happen because I would hate to think of like you have Comerica Park. Comerica Park is Comerica Park because Comerica Bank. Whenever that contract that they have with Comerica Park and the Tigers, whenever that ends up, it could be anything. It could be Chick-fil-A Stadium. It could be
That'd be pretty cool.
it could be Bucharest Park. For those of you listening or what, I wouldn't mind. But it's like it plays a huge factor in so many ways, in memories and how you think of the team, and even just getting used to the name. It's just like it leaves a sour taste in your mouth. The Giants did it recently. They were always AT&T Park, although it's ironic because they were AT&T, and here I am complaining that they're T-Mobile Park.
Yep.
But I'm so used to that name and how the stadium looked, and now it's Oracle Park, and it almost feels like it's just a completely different stadium, even though nothing's changed other than the name, and that really bugs me. I hate it.
Yeah, and kind of adding on to that, sort of what like broke my heart recently is they tore down the Palace of Auburn Hills, and I believe the Palace was either the only or like one of two stadiums or arenas like in the United States that like didn't have a sponsor to it. Like it was just like the Palace and like that's
of Auburn. Yeah,
and
that's.
And now they are obviously a Little Caesars Arena with the Red Wings. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, you do bring up a good point about how there's certain sentimental value that you do have and memories of people that they have from going to certain stadiums and stuff. But at the same time, as you brought up, once that contract is up, there's other bidders and people willing to pay more money, and you're not, going to refuse more money at the end of the day. So it does make sense.
Yeah, it's just a bummer, and there's nothing you can do about it unless make enough money one day to make that change yourself. Be like, you know what? Nope, we're staying put. We're not changing names.
Definitely. And so my last worst, that kind of sounds weird. My last worst rebrand of the apocalypse is Instagram. And those who have been on the app for a while will remember when it used to be, it still is a camera, but it used to be like 3D and coming out at you. And you had the lens and, the flash thing. And now it is, as everyone knows, that flat sort of like rainbowy
Toucan Sam.
Toucan Samantha
Yeah.
type of logo or app picture, if you will. And I don't know if it's just because I might have a hard time with change or what it is, but I used to like that old logo a lot more, and I know that a lot
Yeah.
of people were upset when they changed it, and I'm sure everyone's used to it now. And now that I'm kind of talking about it, I don't really mind the new Instagram logo, and I was probably just overreacting and a little upset when they changed it, but I do miss that old one. And that also reminds me of I don't remember if you remember the old YouTube logo on the
YouTube
yep, with the little TV.
was very similar. The color schemes of the old Instagram app and the YouTube app were very similar. And yeah, those changes are just made without anyone's knowledge. The app updates or whatever, and you're like, oh, like what's this? Like it totally changes on you.
And that's not like a rights thing where the contract's up and it's the stadium changing names. That's just
Right.
one day, whoever's at Instagram headquarters decides like, you know what, let's just pull the trigger. I like this one now.
Yeah, it's completely their decision, and it just happens. But you get used to it, and you gotta roll with the punches.
All right, and I think that will do it for our worst rebrands of the apocalypse, and that will conclude episode 3 of
Hmm.
Bagels and Locks. No guest on this week, Brandon, but I think we both had a very fun time, discussed some good topics. Sports are, as we talked about earlier, slowly creeping back into the world, and who knows? Maybe by episode 5 or episode 6, we'll actually have some games to cover.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a waiting game, and I think definitely by our next episode there will be a plan in place for baseball, because there is rumor that it's coming back mid-June for some spring training, and then by July that it'll be back in action. Interesting to see what happens with the NBA. And golf will be returning full time in 3 weeks with no fans in attendance. So there's a lot to look forward to. Some more potential guests that we may have on in the future. And for now, we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. And for my co-host Jason Silverstone, I'm Brandon Rothenberg. We will see you guys next week on Bagels and Locks.
Bagels and Locks is hosted by Brandon Rothenberg and Jason Silverstone. Edited by Brandon Rothenberg and Jason Silverstone. Theme music by Eli Weil.